Hey guys, how's it going? So, I read all the comments that you guys leave in my videos, and I try my hardest to respond to all of them, and I think most of you guys know that. Maybe once in a while one slips through, but if it does, it's not intentional. I really like to have feedback and conversations with you guys. Well, one of the main questions I've been getting lately is, so I've bought my new Taurus pistol. This is a G2S, it might be a G2C or a G3. What should I do to break it in? What should I do to get this gun ready for the range and to get it ready for my concealed carry or home defense? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit with you guys because it's a great question, and there are a few things that I definitely do to get my new gun ready for the range, and what I do to prove that this gun's going to be, you know, worthy of actually carrying around and that I can start to trust it a little bit, right? So with anything I say in this video, you're going to have to use your own judgment, guys. I'm going to do my best to try to help you out a little bit. I might have less experience than some of you guys. I might have more. But ultimately, a gun, you know, is a high degree of responsibility to carry, own. Your life could be at stake, family members, loved ones, etc. So any advice I give you guys, you're going to have to ultimately make for yourself. But I'm going to try to help you guys out and hang out with you for a little bit, because that's kind of what I like to do, is help out when I can, and I always like to hang out. So we're going to go over some of the basics. New gun, out of the box, what to do to get it ready for shooting, and to kind of prove its reliability. But before I do, just remember, guys, this is a smaller channel. I am basically spending most of the money for the channel out of my own pocket. I have some Patreon supporters. I appreciate every one of you guys. But the channel still costing me money. I'm not making money doing this. So if you guys find any of this info useful, helpful, and you have a little bit extra money to spend, my Patreon link is down in the description of this video, and it really helped me out so I can keep on making these videos for you guys. Alright, so this is my new Taurus G2S. I just did the unboxing recently. I've not had a chance to fire this gun, so that's why I'm using the G2S. These same principles are going to be for any of these Taurus guns, especially Taurus guns, but also really for almost any pistol, right? So we're going to start off. I'm just going to take the mag out. Never take safety for granted, guys, not even for a split second. Make sure it's empty, and it is. So I'm just going to take this gun apart real quick. Alright, so there's basically two parts, right? The receiver or the grip frame and the slide. Let's go over the slide first. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish disassembling the slide. It's real easy. Put your hand over it so the spring can never hit you in the face. I'm just going to take the captive dual spring recoil guide rod assembly out. I'm going to then slightly lift up into the rear with the barrel. I'm going to take my barrel out, right? Now I have my slide. I actually just put out a video like a couple days ago showing you guys all of the inspection and showing this gun was tested rather at the factory. So I'm going to skip that right now because I just did a video on this. So I'm going to do everything in that video first, and let's get to this point. So when you have a brand new gun, there's obviously metal to metal contact in this slide, as well as the way the slide interacts with the frame or receiver. So the first thing let's talk about is lubricant. And I want to note one more time, this type of lubricating I'm about to show you is for the breaking in of a new pistol. Now, when you start to carry this gun on a daily basis, after you've cleaned it up real good from your initial break-in and range testing, I'm going to suggest that you lubricate it in a completely different way. Not completely, but you're going to use a lot less lube, because too much lube on a gun can actually attract a bunch of dust, lint, pocket lint, debris from the outside air and environment, and can make the gun malfunction. So you can definitely get into this trap of, if you use too much lubrication, it can actually mess your gun up. Trust me, it can happen. But this is specifically the way I lube my gun right out of the box. So we have metal wearing against metal, and these parts are going to essentially break in with each other, right? It's no different than for you motorheads when you put an engine together. You're going to put it together and the metal's going to be dry, but you wouldn't start it because it takes a split second, right, for the oil pump to pump the oil through all the galleys and channels and everywhere in your engine, and you don't want a dry start. So you use assembly lube when you put an engine together. Well, the principles are kind of the same here. So I'm going to start off by saying I lubricate the gun with much more oil right out of the box than I normally would. I like to lubricate it and let the parts mate into each other wet. So you're going to grab your favorite gun lube. There's many of them that are good. Most of them are good. Even regular motor oil or even synthetic motor oil is also, in my opinion, awesome. Now, everyone's going to have their opinion. I don't care what lube you use. That's not the purpose of this video. But I have a couple right here. You know, your CLP is pretty common. I have some of this Gun Slick. I really like this oil. I love Slip 2000, and I like synthetic motor oil and many things. So I'm going to start off with the barrel, okay? And you're going to notice just by the little bit of wear that the barrel comes in contact with the slide. So I'm just going to put some oil on this guy, a few drops, not a ton. Even for break-in, I don't want to put too much because I don't want oil going all over my hands and face. I'm just going to put some on here. You can put on a glove if you want. But I'm just going to rub it all the way around the barrel. I'm coating all of it, right? Now I'm going to come up to the chamber area or the barrel hood. My fingers are pretty wet with oil. And I'm going to rub it on the top and both sides. I'm literally kind of getting all of the outer parts of the barrel wet with oil. Now there's one more spot. You're going to always keep a rag handy, guys. And don't do this on your nice couch because you probably spent a lot of money for it. And your wife will make you buy a new one. So, yeah, put some newspaper down, whatever. Now, we also have this area right here, okay? This little recess. I'm just going to put a drop of oil in there. And just as you move the barrel around, it's going to spread. Now, this barrel is thoroughly coated in oil on the outside. Note, I am not putting any oil in the bore. Don't put it in the bore. I would recommend taking a little bore mop or a bristle brush and getting out some of that residue from the factory testing. As I've shown in previous videos, you'll see some unburnt powder residue from when Taurus test fired your gun. And if your barrel was a little dirty, wipe it down before you oil it, okay? I've already kind of wiped this one down. So that's the barrel, nice and wet. Now, I'm going to do the same thing for my dual guide rod and captured recoil assembly. I've already oiled this before the video, guys. But same thing, just dot, 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 dot. Take your fingers, spread it around. It'll work itself in there. This is just to make sure that right off the bat, your springs aren't going to have a chance to rust. And there is, you know, parts that reciprocate. This is a dual guide rod assembly. So the one guide rod does move in and out. The smaller one moves in and out of the larger one. And the springs move. So there's friction, right? I'm going to get that nice and wet. Now the slide itself. I'm going to just apply a little bit of oil to this top area right here. You can already see just from the factory testing. I've not shot this gun yet, guys. You can already see some wear. So that tells you right there that that's a spot where metal is rubbing against other metal. So I'm just going to put a dot of oil right in here. Okay. You can kind of move the slide around. Take your finger in there, move it around a little bit. We also have the rails of the slide. So see the recess here? And it's going to be the same way on the other side. I'm going to let gravity kind of be my friend, and I usually tip it up like this, and I just put a dot there in the slide. It starts to run right down. Now this is in the little grooves, same thing as the other side, okay? And then sometimes I'll come back. It'll go about halfway down. I'll come about halfway down, same thing. One drop on one side and one drop in the other. And I'm just literally letting gravity do its job. Pretty much already flown down to the end. That's what's nice about using a gun lube. They're a little thinner. If you're going to use motor oil, use what you want. But I kind of like a OW20 synthetic. Flows real nice. Nice and lightweight. Not going to be quite as, you know, viscous as some of the thicker motor oils. Now, you can use 2050 if you want. I don't care. I don't want to dwell on what type of lube to use. But I'm just lubing up the rails. Now, there's also a spot here where it is going to make a little contact. This flat area right underneath the rails. That, I don't like to put a lot of oil on it, so I'll just kind of dab it on my finger a little bit here. And just kind of dab, 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 and dab in 4 spots. Then I'm just going to run my finger up and down, okay? Just to where it gets it shiny. Now, make note of this, guys, if you're new to guns. This is your striker channel, this red piece of plastic. And the channel basically goes from the rear of the slide all the way through underneath this ramped area. and it ends at what's called your breech face. That's the part of the slide that your firing pin protrudes through to light off your primer and fire your round. Do not put any oil ever in your striker. That's bad news. It can cause a couple things to happen. First of all, it can attract dirt and dust from the air or pocket lint and cause grittiness in here and jam it up. The other thing it can do, believe it or not, is called hydrolocking, where if you have a liquid in here, this is such a tight fit because this is a metal piece and another metal part of the slide, but there's also a sleeve. That's the orange plastic we see. This is a very tight fit, okay? And there's a little striker cup, it's called, that holds your spring in place, and it basically makes a seal. Now, if there's liquid in there, you know liquid can make pressure, and it can what's called hydrolock. If there's no air to let it out, kind of like if you're pouring something in a funnel and your funnel's really tight, the liquid doesn't want to go down, so you lift it up a little bit and let it breathe. There's not really any room to breathe, so do not ever oil anywhere inside of your striker assembly whatsoever or the channel. Keep it dry for the rest of its life. Don't even think about it. If you're going to do any cleaning on the breech face, use a real light little, gun cleaning solvent. Try to keep it tilted down a little bit so it doesn't go back through the hole. Hit it with a brush. Get in there and dry that part out. You don't need any lubrication on your breech face where your striker protrudes through, right? So keep oil away from there. Other than that, that's a pretty good idea of how I lubricate this. One more time. This is for my initial break-in. I'm not going to use this much oil once I'm starting to carry the gun because the excess oil, the advantages it may provide, is going to be definitely counteracted by the likelihood of it picking up more grime and dirt and dust. All right. Now let's go down to the frame here. We have 2 metal rails in the front, 2 metal rails in the rear. Now, remember a second ago, I showed you guys how there's recessed rails in the slide on both sides. Well, that is where these protruding rails are going to slide back and forth in that channel on the slide. So what I'm going to do is just take my oil. I'm going to put 1 dot on the top of this one, 1 dot on the top of the other. Now they interact on the top and on the top of it, right? But they also interact on the side. So I'm just going to take and put, and when I say a drop, I mean just like barely what'll come out. So if there's a such thing as like half a drop, that's it. Just touch it. Just touch it to it. I like to use my fingers. I'm just going to kind of wipe any excess off so it's not completely puddled, but it's still plenty moist, right? Same thing for the rear. A drop on top of each of the 2. A drop on the side. And these are, I want to emphasize one more time, small little drops, okay? Same thing. I'm not going to try to get it dry. I want to keep it wet, but I'm just going to wipe off anything. There's also this little hump here that's near your ejector. This interacts with your drop safety on your slide, and it does actually rub the slide. So I'll put a little drop on there and wipe it right off with my finger. I'm not trying to flood any of the trigger components. I'm not trying to get oil down into any of these parts in the back. I'm also not trying to oil my trigger. So don't think about putting oil in the bottom spot here by the trigger. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not a good idea because the oil is ultimately going to attract dirt and dust and make your trigger gritty, and in a worst case scenario, make it actually seize up where it either won't fire or and sometimes won't reset. So keep oil out of there the best you can. And we're lubricated up nice and wet. So I'm basically going to real quick throw my barrel back into the slide here. Let's put this slide back together and put the gun together. And then I'll move on to tell you guys what I actually do when I get to the range and before I go to the range. So the big like fat end goes into the front. There's a little ledge, so you just basically compress the spring a little bit, get it to go down on that ledge. Never put your face right above it when you're doing this because this is a captured recoil spring. It's not going to do a whole lot, but it can still pop out. Never want to get hurt. So we're just going to make sure everything's in there as it should be, seated in. This is going to show you right here. You see the back of those 2 little frame rails? Those are just going to mate right in. So now we can see clearly why I'm putting oil on the top and sides of these rails and why I put a little on the inside of this rail. And why I put a little bit on the bottom. Okay? See that? It already feels so good because there's now oil. I don't want my gun to break in by galling the metal, because if you guys are familiar, You can take like 2 pieces of dry steel and have it almost smear the steel a little bit. That's called galling. We're breaking the gun in. I like to break it in wet. Now look, when you wreck the slide a couple times, you're going to immediately notice on the back there's excess oil coming out. It always happens. Have your little rag handy. Wipe that off real good. Make sure there's none on the grip frame. Anything that came out from the slide on the side of the gun, wipe it off real good. Make sure your fingers are nice and dry before you even touch that trigger, because you never want oil on the outside of your trigger for obvious reasons. We want the finger to stick right on that trigger. We don't even want to think about it sliding off. So there we go. We'll function check it. Everything appears to be working just fine. Dry firing it. Now that's the next thing. Before you have a chance to go to the range, because you just bought your new gun, you're itching to toy around with it, but you can't go to the range till next Saturday because you work 80 hours a week like me and a lot of us, right? Or you're saving up some money to go to the range, whatever. There's always that time where we're like just looking at it thinking, I want to go to the range. Well, we can start breaking it in right now. And just from racking it a few times, I'm already getting a little bit of oil coming out of the back of the gun there. Just dry it off again. Just keep your rag. After you've wrecked the slide so many times and dabbed it dry, all the excess will come off on its own from the frame rails. Again, this is nice and wet because we're breaking it in. So sit there, rack the slide. You're not completely simulating the force of an explosion and a round going off, but you're actually already right now. You can do it like this, nice and easy if you want, and you guys do what you want. It's your hard-earned money, it's your gun. But I've had guns forever, guys. This doesn't hurt it to pull it to the back and simply let go. On some guns, maybe, but on these types of guns, I'm not worried about it. But that's just me. Do what you want. You can coax it forward. You can snap it forward. But we're actually, right now, breaking in our gun. And I often will sit here with a new gun and do this several hundred times. Why not? We're breaking it in for free right now. We're not using any ammo. We're at home. We're kind of bored. Plus, we just want to toy around with our new investment and our new little baby, because when you get a new gun, it's hard just to sit there and look at it. So, we're playing with the gun. We're having fun. We're breaking it in. So, I do plenty of this, guys. I also start dry firing, which dry firing is great for breaking in the trigger. As with many guns, you might notice a little glitch or grittiness in a trigger, but a lot of times, the more you fire it. Now, we can do single action and keep resetting it by racking the slide. Or with what they call the restrike capability, which is really double action. We can sit there and break that in and practice that. So the moving parts of the gun, we're exercising all of them as we speak without firing a round of ammo. So I'll pull this trigger a couple hundred times. I'll rack the slide a couple hundred times, just like I'm showing you guys. In fact, this is pretty cool. I'm getting to hang out with you guys. I'm getting to share maybe some info that'll help someone. And I'm actually breaking my gun in. I won't have to mess around as much now before I take this on its first range trip. Literally, if the camera wasn't on right now, I'd be doing the same thing I'm showing you guys. This is just what I do. Do what you want, but I'm just, you know, people have asked me, what do you do, man? So, there you go. This is really, really helping to mate these parts in. The other thing is, if there was some kind of manufacturer's defect, which I've not had on any of my new Tauruses, but it can happen on any gun, it might show its face right here, right now. If this trigger all of a sudden just failed to reset, or it failed to pull, or the slide jammed up, you know? So, then I guess I could start my warranty claim right away instead of driving all the way out to the range. So, we're breaking in metal to metal. Everything's nice and wet where the metal to metal surfaces are. Now keep in mind, the top of this chamber hood, it's wet right now. So when you're done doing this, you're going to want to go in here and dry it off a little bit, or just kind of keep it as wet as you can for the range. So here's what we're going to do next. We've done this, we've messed around, now I'm going to go to the range. Here's what I do. I'll buy a brass plinking ammo. This is a tried and true for me. This stuff's been available forever, for cheap. I'll grab about 100 rounds of this. And I'm going to load up my magazines, and I'm going to do my best to shoot 100 rounds of brass through it. Now, if you can only do 50 today, that's fine. Try to do 50 another day. This is all breaking in the gun, first of all. And second of all, we're proving, I dropped another box of ammo, sorry guys, that this gun's reliable enough where we could possibly trust it, right? So, you guys can all have your own judgment. That's how I started off this video. But I like to shoot minimum of 100 rounds of ball rounds full metal jacket, whatever you want to call it. This is specifically Federal, 115 grain, round nose, brass cased. This stuff's cheap. 100 rounds to it. Now, this is just me. Some of you guys are going to do this, some of you aren't. I also like to know if my guns will shoot steel case, because as cheap as this stuff is, this is even like 30% cheaper. So I'm going to take and shoot 50 rounds of Tula ammo, or Wolf, or whatever. Red Army Standard, any of them. Steel case. I'm going to fire 50 through it. I want my gun that I'm going to be shooting quite a bit to shoot steel case, because like I said before, you Patreon supporters are awesome, but I'm not making money doing this. It costs me money. So I'm going to try to save some money on ammo. If you're never going to shoot steel case, and you never ever will, and you don't believe in it, I don't believe it's going to tear up my gun. But if you believe it's going to tear up your gun, don't use it. Then you can skip this step. Now, for the self-defense. I just did a video, check my Taurus playlist, on the self-defense ammo I use. So this is the Federal HST. You can sit there and fire in some guns 1,000 rounds of this, 1,000 rounds of that. But when you go to put your hollow points in, some guns can jam. Some guns like certain specific types of ammo. Other types they absolutely don't like. So if you're going to carry the gun, whether it's a hollow point or any type of defensive ammo, or I wouldn't recommend this, but even if you're going to use a ball ammo, you know, a full metal jacket for self-protection, I really don't recommend that, guys. There's so many good solid copper rounds and expanding hollow points. Try to save up the money and buy good ammo. Plenty of good channels out there that do ammo tests. You guys can decide what you want to use. But you've got to practice with your self-defense ammo. You have to do it, because this stuff's expensive. But how much is your life worth? You can't take something out there into the field and have zero chance. Now, you can always, you know, have a chance of a malfunction no matter how many rounds you've shot, but you're drastically increasing your odds of the gun going bang every time if you prove it'll work with your carry ammo. So this is what I'm going to recommend. And this might be a little more than what some of you guys want to do, but I buy the Federal HST in the 50 round boxes. I'm getting it down to 60 something cents a round. But you can buy it also at many stores in your plastic, you know, little clamshell box, where they'll sell them, depending on the brand, 20 rounds, 25 rounds. A lot of times they're $1 a round or more when you buy them this way. You can save in bulk. Now, this is just me. I fire 50, literally 50, of my chosen self-defense round that I think I'm going to want to use, and it's got to eat all 50 before I'm going to trust this round to carry it. Now, again, if you can't quite afford that, at least try to put one of these small boxes through it first. You could buy 2 of these small boxes and put one through the gun on your initial range testing, and then save the other box to load your mags with. Or if you buy the big box, these you can get online. Maybe some gun shops sell them, but these you're going to find at most of your sporting goods stores, right? So you could put half of this. This is at a minimum. I prefer you to put 50 through it. That's what I do, but at least put 20, 25 rounds of your practice ammo. Now, none of this is legal advice. You guys are responsible for your own safety and decisions, but that's kind of where I'm at, guys. Thoroughly lube it. Do a bunch of break-in before the range. Dry firing. Dry firing's awesome. Snap caps. Those are completely awesome. I talk about these in a lot of my videos. Get you some snap caps. These are the realistic snap caps. They're real cases, a real weight and grain and feel bullet in it. No primer though, no powder. There's a silicone in there that you're firing against, so this is totally not ammunition. These are awesome too. We can now literally sit there and test the initial feeding of the gun, which it did feed. The loaded chamber indicator popped up. We've just proven 2 things right there that are working right off the bat. And now I can fire into this snap cap. I can reset the gun. I can practice ejecting ammo out, extracting it and ejecting it, all that. So dry fire it, dry rack the slide. Make sure your mag is holding it open, right, on the last round, which it did. Practice releasing those mags. You can practice releasing a mag, grabbing your second mag, and loading it, especially if there's a snap cap in there, rechambering the round. You can do all this at home for free, and I recommend doing all of it. And as many guns as I've owned, I do all this on every new gun, guys. Why not? It's free to sit here and practice at home, and it's kind of fun. So there you guys go. The exact amount of rounds you guys want to shoot, that's up to you. I'm going to go 100 full metal jacket, cheap brass ammo. Since I like to shoot steel, I'm going to test it with a box of steel. I don't like to fool around with protecting my life. So if it's a concealed carry or home defense gun, I'm going to shoot first 50 rounds of my chosen home defense ammo. Then I'm going to go on and load up my mags with it. If I feel it's accurate, I'm going to check the accuracy of it. A bunch of other things. But I don't want to get too much into everything that has to do with owning one of these. But I tried to do a thorough job explaining what I do from out of the box all the way until I've now decided that I can carry this gun. And don't forget, after you're done with that first range trip, or if you have to drag it out into several trips, clean the gun out, lubricate it, probably use a little less oil in those spots. It's up to you. Just remember, when you're carrying a gun, if it has too much oil, it can attract more dust and lint and cause you more problems than what it's worth. But when I'm running it wet, I'm not carrying it yet at that point, I'm just using this extra oil to really nicely mate in those metal to metal surfaces and to get the metal parts to form like a nice fitment. And that initial fitment is going to help the gun be more smooth for the rest of its life. Now there's you guys out there that are going to say, I take my guns out of the box, don't put a drop of oil on it ever, and I never have. That's what's awesome about being your own person. If that's what you want to do, I'm not going to try to stop you, but I'm telling you guys what I do, so naturally that's what I'm going to recommend. Hope that answered you guys' question. I know the video went a little long, but so many of you guys out there are really new to this. And if I can just help one new guy get on the right track to shooting, have the confidence with his or her gun, and she has the ability to protect her kids, her family, he has the ability to do the same, then I feel these videos are worth doing. So I'm going to stop knocking ammo over. It's the second time I've done it. So I think it's time to end the video. Alright guys, if you have any more questions, go down in the comments. Let me know what you do. I do try to answer some of these frequently asked questions. It's always fun to hang out with you guys and maybe teach you something. Alright, thanks for watching, and have a good one.